Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Something Rhymes with Purple, where we get to return to some of my favourite things in the world, and these are linguistic gaps. Now, with me is Gyles, as always. And Gyles, we hit our 200th episode, didn't we? Our 200th birthday at the end of January. And for us, we found this really special because we had so many brilliant questions from people asking, what do you call this, X or Y or Z? And it really got us doing some major head scratching and trying to come up with words to fill those gaps, sometimes borrowed from other languages. Turns out we had so many, we can return to them.
I'm glad we can return to them. It was very celebratory. I love a celebration. I've just had my birthday, you know. I went away.
I know, and you did something really special.
Well, I did do something really special in the sense that it was an amazing event. I hosted a party. As you know, one of my 7 grandchildren had babyhood cancer and was a patient at Great Ormond Street Hospital in London. And the other day, or rather the end of last year, had their 5-year all clear from the babyhood cancer, which was, of course, they have to be checked every year. But anyway, it was good news. And I thought time to say thank you and to celebrate. So we organized for my birthday an event at a party on the stage of the London Palladium. And we've raised, I'm proud to tell you, more than £100,000 in one afternoon.
Fantastic.
Thanks to all the people who appeared on the stage.
I saw a picture. I have to say, I was staggered as to how many amazing women you gathered there that day.
I gathered a dozen dames. There was more than 1,000 years of theatrical experience on that stage. Dame Judi Dench, you name it, they were all there. Dame Judi Dench, Dame Joan Collins, Dame Maureen Lipman, Joanna Lumley, Twiggy. I mean, they were all just every theatrical dame you could think of. Luella Benjamin. They were all there, and they were wonderful, and they were so entertaining. Eileen Atkins did a music hall turn. And these are people in their 80s and 90s, some of them. Oh, Patricia Routledge. Do you remember Hyacinth Bouquet?
I do. She's amazing in so many ways, not just for Hyacinth.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So, but she has created in Hyacinth Bouquet one of those characters that will live forever, rather like Joanna Lumley created Patsy for Absolutely Fabulous. And she sang a wonderful Noel Coward song. And then, she's in her mid-90s. She was on stage so formidable. We did a quiz as part of the show. And I said to her, Joanna Lumley is the captain of your team and you're the deputy. She said, I've never been a deputy in all my life and I'm not starting now. And it was a wonderful occasion and a very happy way to celebrate a birthday. So we, of course, are going on the stage as well with our show. And there's something special about being on a stage, isn't there, with a live audience? There
really is. I've just added some dates to my own show, which has been going forever because of COVID, really. And I'm going to write a new one. But do you know, I so look forward to it. I've been doing matinees, and there's something special about a matinee performance, I think, because it's just a lovely way to sort of interrupt my day. It's a lovely interruption, and I really look forward to it.
I love a matinee. We must explore one day the origin of the word matinee, because matin means morning, doesn't it?
It does, yeah, because they originally were in the mornings.
Ah.
Yeah.
Because the matinee that we see in the theatre usually is in the afternoon.
Exactly, yeah, mid-afternoon, or like 2, isn't it? 2 or 2:30.
2:30, ours are.
Yes.
Anyway, we celebrated our 200th birthday of Something Rhymes with Purple in an ingenious way, didn't we? And we had so much material that we didn't use it all. What have we got left over? What are we going to talk about now?
Well, we're just going to kick off. Why not? Why don't we just dive into the mailbag and pull one out? This is from Caroline Schreiber.
Hi, Susie and Gyles. I am a native French speaker, and one word I have never found an equivalent for in English is dépayser. D-E-P-A-Y-S-E-R. That's the verb. Dépaysement, which is the noun, or dépaysant, the adjective. The feeling of being somewhere different, somewhere other than what you're used to. I wondered if there was a word you could suggest to express that sense of unhomely feeling, but one that doesn't have positive or negative undertones. The French word can be used for both. Dépayser. How interesting.
Yes, dépaysement is lovely. And Caroline's absolutely right, because it's quite an intense feeling. It means decountrification. So it's that state of physical removal from one's own homeland and the sort of discombobulation that change really provokes in you or inspires in you. But it isn't entirely negative. It can also be the desire to just have fresh surroundings and just to blow away the cobwebs.
So I may have been mispronouncing it, because obviously at the heart of the word, the French word is pays. Should it be dépayser?
Dépaysement, yeah. is decountrification and dépayser. Yes, well, beautiful. I think you pronounced it beautifully. And I can only offer another sort of, I wouldn't say foreign word, but a word that's not particularly naturalized in English in return for this, but it does capture this completely. It's the idea of encountering somewhere for the first time and feeling very out of place. And it's the Irish adwantas.
Oh.
And it means unfamiliarity, but it really is about the mixture of feelings that you might experience when you find yourself in these strange surroundings. So you're out of your comfort zone, which can bring both good things and bad.
Good. Well, here's another one. Hello, Susie and Gyles. You asked for our linguistic gap, so here goes. Is there a word for the feeling you get when physical reality tricks your anticipation, usually when you're not paying much attention, and you're forced to take a moment to recalculate your surroundings? For example, when you're walking up familiar stairs in the dark and you think there's one more step, but your foot instead swipes the empty air and your whole leg comes down with a seriously discomforting thwump.
Yes, I've done that before. And we all recognise that, don't we? But also that one where you forget that there is an extra step, and then that can be very risky.
Well, he gives the other example, a puddle, which is hidden under a pivoted paving stone. You only know it's there when you step on the paving stone and the puddle shoots up your leg. That was a question from Chris in Colorado.
Yes, brilliant. Oh, it's interesting, isn't it, how so many of these are almost untranslatables, even though they are universal emotions. There is a word, believe it or not, which is a riff on déjà vu. And déjà vu is when we have that feeling that we've been somewhere before or have experienced in exactly the same moment as one is experiencing now. There is jamais vu. And that is the sense that surroundings that actually you're really familiar with are being experienced for the first time because you just don't recognize them. You're sort of, discombobulated, and you need a chance to recombobulate. And maybe that fits Chris's question of when you're forced to take a moment to recalculate and recalibrate, etc. But it's interesting. And I was talking to Harriet, our producer, about that step, that ghost step. You go to take it, but it's not actually there, because she's reminded me of a lovely definition from The Meaning of Lift. Now, are you familiar with The Meaning of Lift, Gyles?
I do indeed. Written by the famous Douglas Adams and John Lloyd, who's a television producer that you and I both know.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. It's a clever book, isn't it? Clever idea. Explain what the concept is.
Yes, well, they identified as many linguistic gaps as they could find in English, and there do seem to be a lot. And they then gave them a British place name. So with some wonderful ones, and I've talked to you before about Abilene, which is the cool side of your pillow. You know, when you just sort of turn your pillow over and it's just absolutely gorgeous. Well, they also have an Aff Puddle. Now, I'm not completely sure where Aff Puddle is, actually. So I'm now looking it up.
I bet it's in Wales, because ap means son of or something, doesn't it?
Ap does, yes, and that's why we have up John and stuff. No, Aff, this is Aff with a double F, and it's in the Purbeck district of Dorset in southwest England. And an Aff puddle, it says, is a puddle which is hidden under a pivoted paving stone. And yes, it is all about that one that, where the water shoots up your leg because you hadn't anticipated it. So the meaning of lift can help where we couldn't.
Good. Next question. This comes from Janet Luxton. Kia ora. Hi, Susie and Gyles. I wondered about a word for that feeling you have when you eat the first produce from your garden for the season. I guess smug could work, if a little pejorative, but I find it's a mixture of joy, accomplishment, pleasure. And then she adds, and for my pleasure, I'm going to read this, thank you for your gorgeous podcast. It's a wonderful listen every week. Aku mihi, my thanks. Janet Luxton. The kia ora and the aku mihi, what language do they come from, Susie?
Oh, they're from New Zealand, aren't they? So those are from Maori.
Very good.
And it's lovely. And you know what? I think I'm going to go again to another lost positive. Although, to be fair, this one hasn't been nestling in the dictionary for centuries. It was given to us, as you and I have said before, Gyles, by P.G. Wodehouse. But I think it's gruntlement, isn't it? And that captures everything. A quiet satisfaction without smugness, really. It is just that deep, peaceful contentment. I love it. So I'm going to say that you're feeling gruntled, so maybe you could be garden gruntled.
Garden gruntled. I like that. We all need a sense of achievement in our lives, even in small ways. I was reading some research about people who hated Monday, always dreaded a Monday, and went to bed on Sunday night feeling uncomfortable about Mondays. There must be a word. The Mubblefubbles. Yes. Is that what it's called? What's it called?
The Mubblefubbles. I always call them the Sunday Mubblefubbles. That's the 17th century word,
people feel apprehensive about Monday, but I think it's people feel apprehensive about their work if they're unlucky. You and I are very lucky because our work is so varied.
Yes.
And we do get surprises. We get days when there's a sense of achievement. If you don't get surprise and a sense of achievement in your work, you could feel pretty grim about going back to work.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yes. You absolutely could.
Before the break, we're returning to a question posed in our previous episode about the word for that uneasy feeling one experiences when sitting on a seat warmed by the previous occupant. Because we have an answer.
Yes. Now, just to unpack this a bit, just to remind you, Gyles, you quite liked a seat that was already warm.
Yes. Well,
say on a train, but not a loose seat. Categorically not a loose seat.
Absolutely. I like to be clothed. I don't mind getting into a car where the seat has been previously warmed. And nowadays, in fact, I want a warm car seat. And I look for the button that will press to warm up the seat.
If you're lucky, yes.
I like all that. And I don't mind if it's been humanly warmed on a train or a bus or in a... But I do not want to sit and be reminded on the lavatory seat that somebody has sat there before me. I really don't.
No. And you told us all that you were a hoverer. And I think if ever we need a word, it is for someone who hovers above the toilet for fear of sitting down.
Yeah, a toilet hoverer. Yes.
There must be something to do with a helicopter on there. We'll have to think of it. But yes, we had some brilliant suggestions. John Dagan suggested squarmth, which I think is a brilliant blend. It's squirm plus warmth. And his reason is when in cities, I always ride public transit. Residual body heat on a transit seat makes me squirm a bit. Squirm plus warmth is squarmth. I think that's just genius. Kirsty Mullock gave us another portmanteau. Heesence, the heat presence. Heesence.
That's very good.
And Lucia Cousins suggested the afterbum effect. A bit like the afterburn effect.
Yeah, I think it's very good.
Yes, absolutely.
Or she also came up with residual heat. A play on residual. Instead of being residual, it's residual.
Yes.
Residual heat.
Residual heat. But you know what, Gyles? We've already mentioned the meaning of liff, and they do provide the answer. And it is the name of Janet Burrows' hometown. So she wrote in to say, it very much made me chuckle all those years ago. Different pronunciation, she says, but it's Shoeburyness. And Shoeburyness in the deeper meaning of liff. So this is a spin-off, really, of their dictionary. It's the vague feeling of uncomfortableness caused by sitting on a bus seat still warm from someone else's bottom.
Shoeburyness. And where is Shoeburyness? It's somewhere in the British Isles?
Shoebury it would be, wouldn't it? So Shoebury, we can look this up as well.
Oh, I thought the place was actually called Shoeburyness.
I think it's, maybe it is Shoeburyness. Oh, you're right. It is in Southend-on-Sea.
That's what I thought. I thought it was somewhere Essex way.
Yeah. No, that is absolutely brilliant. And this is another great one from the meaning of liff, which I reminded of. It's a Norris Thorpe. That's such a British place name. A Norris Thorpe is the first person in a motorway traffic jam to get out of their car and walk about sighing.
I can picture that.
Brilliant.
It's a great word, a Norris Thorpe. Who has been in touch?
We have a voice note from Sophie Madeley.
Hello, dearest Susie and Gyles. I've only just found this podcast and I absolutely love it. When I first got together with my now husband, I used to call him a bumpkin as a term of endearment until he told me what it meant. Where does the term come from? Look forward to hearing from you. Keep up the amazing work and thank you. Sophie Madeley, Manchester.
I think it's rather sweet, you bumpkin, you. But does it suggest somebody's a bit simple, a bumpkin?
Yeah, it's all about this rivalry between those in the city and those in the countryside.
Oh,
which
a country bumpkin.
Yes, has given us so many different words from if you're urbane, you are urban and sophisticated, whereas if you're a hick, you are out in the sticks and not considered to be very sophisticated. And actually, bumpkin is one of these. It goes back to a Dutch word meaning a sort of dumpy kind of barrel-like person. It goes back to a Dutch word meaning a barrel, essentially. Oh. So the idea is of somebody who's kind of quite squat, not very urbane, and hence probably from the country. So a bit insulting to all the lovely country dwellers. So I can see, Sophie, why your husband didn't quite want to latch onto that, but yeah, maybe call him pumpkin instead.
I don't know. I think I can see it too as a term of endearment. A bumpkin is sort of cuddly, but I know what you mean. Also, a bumpkin's got straw in their hair and that sort of thing.
Yes, exactly. It's that stereotype, isn't it?
And but when you break down the word, it's bump and kin. Kin means relation, doesn't it?
No, kin here is a diminutive, so it means something little. So a munchkin, if you remember from The Wizard of Oz, it's just all about diminutive things. And it just adds to the insult, I think.
Because I just thought it was a relative who was like a bump on the head, somebody sort of simple.
No, not at all.
Sometimes the word can be a false friend if you just try and look at it and think, I can unwrap this.
Absolutely.
Well, when in doubt, give Susie a shout, as somebody has done. Fintan Lamb.
Hi, Susie and Gyles. I love the show, and it's great to know there are listeners across the world who enjoy it too. I have a few questions on well-worn phrases and cliches. Where do we get the phrase, without further ado? Also, the cliche in broad daylight is often used when referring to reporting on crimes committed during the day. Why do we consider daylight to be broad? Is in broad daylight commonly used for anything other than describing the environment when a crime is committed? Keep up the good work. Fintan Lamb, Gorey, County Wexford, Ireland.
County Wexford. I'm going to Ireland soon. I love Ireland. I love the Irish accent.
Me too.
And I love those very intriguing questions. Do you know the answer to either of them?
Well, ado is quite a nice one because without further ado is not so empty as you might think, because to have ado in the 14th century was to have things to do. So if you said, I have much ado, I have got a lot on my to-do list. And of course, much ado about nothing is much kind of fuss, really. It's just kind of a lot going on. And without further ado means without stopping to do anything else, you will progress to the next stage. So it actually is quite pithy, I think, and I quite like that and very old. And yes, in broad daylight, absolutely right. It's now in full view of any onlookers, and it typically is used when the action is surprising, that somebody would be quite so blunt and blatant. In broad daylight, and broad has designated the full light of day since the 14th century. Broad daylight is first recorded in around the 1870s, but in broad day came before then too. And it has descended into a bit of a hackneyed phrase, but the idea is full, the full light of day, when it is fully light. That's the sense of broad here. But yeah, it has become to mean specifically, oh, I know that they're doing that in broad daylight. I never expected to see that.
We must have touched on this before. The American slang for a female, abroad.
Oh, yeah.
Is that the same idea? Something
Broad.
that's wide? What is that? What's the origin of that?
Yeah, it was originally, I don't know if actually this is connected, but it was short for abroad, and actually it had a fairly sad meaning, really, because it was about a marriage between people who were enslaved, really. And so abroad was a partner, and, they may not be recognised in law. So very sort of sad beginning there. Now, broad speech is speech that is supposedly kind of unrefined and unsophisticated. I'm looking down into the noun sense. I'm going to come back to you, because it's going to take me a while. The entry for broad is as broad as it is long. And I'm just going to have to come back to you, because I can't see an obvious answer to this.
The phrase "without further ado" makes me think of another phrase, "without further ado." Is that somebody's invention? It's rather clever,
Yeah, I think
isn't
that's
it?
what we call an egg corn. But I think without further ado, it makes sense. Without saying goodbye, I'm just kind of going to go straight on to something. But it's
That's good. I'll say goodbye without further ado. I think it's a rather clever turn
It
of
is
phrase.
actually, isn't it? Right. I think we've got a couple more, actually. This one is from Jenny McGill.
Hello, Susie and Gyles. I love your podcast, and as I have an undergraduate degree in linguistics and I'm a practicing speech pathologist, I adore words. And it occurred to me many years ago that the whole in workaholic or chocoholic surely comes from alcohol, and thus alcoholic. The suffix is ic, isn't it? So shouldn't I be a chochic and a workic? Doesn't have quite the same ring to it, though. Warmest regards from sunny Australia, Jenny McGill.
That is so clever. I think she must be spot on, is she?
She sort of is. Yes. I mean, it's a brilliant question. But I have to say that all the other aholics are riffs on alcoholic. And even though we're stealing some of alcohol for this, and so it doesn't quite make sense, that was the kind of progenitor of all the others. And then it was respelt as an A to reflect the pronunciation, because we don't say alcoholic, we say alcoholic. And just a word on alcohol itself, if you remember, it goes back to al-Kohl, which actually is in Arabic, and it means the coal, Kohl, Kohl, being a substance which, when powdered, was used to darken the eyes. So Cleopatra is said to have used coal to darken her eyes. And today, even today, you might have a coal eye pencil. Well, not you, Gyles, probably, but it's, part of a makeup kit. And then the alcohol or alcohol of wine was also a distillation, the same kind of distillation. It was an extract from wine.
And I'm going out partying.
So alcohol came first, and then it was in the 20th century that we got all the other holics like workaholic and chocoholic, etc. So Jenny is spot on, but language has never been sensible.
Oh, well done, Jenny. Lovely to hear from you anyway. And finally, oh, look, Charlie Vose has been in touch and he's got a nice greeting. Hi, Gylesy. That's Gyles and Susie combined, you see. He's made a portmanteau of our names, Susie. It's rather nice. We're a little double act, aren't we? We're a pod pair.
Oh, my goodness.
While listening to your last episode when Gyles had dinner with the king and queen consort, actually it was lunch, it reminded me of, it was the Prime Minister I had dinner with, it reminded me of my determined detective work when I realised I didn't know what we would call the next era with the new king. Victorian for Victoria, Elizabethan for Elizabeth, and I was surprised to find that under King Charles we were heading into our third Carolean era. It sounds positively euphonious. Why and when does this come from? Toasty regards from Charlie.
It does, actually. Well, the first version of this was actually Caroline, spelt like Caroline, and both Carolean and Caroline look back to the Latin version of Charles, which was Carolus, Carolus. And in the 17th century, Caroline referred to Charles the Great, Charlemagne, and it was actually referring to a type of tiny handwriting developed in France at the time of Charlemagne. Then it came to designate Charles I and Charles II, etc. But Carolean is the more modern version of this. It came about in the 20th century, and it just follows Jacobean the same way, really, all looking back to the Latin Carolus.
Looking forward a quarter of a century, when William, the now Prince of Wales, becomes the next king, will he be William V? I think he will be. What would that be? I mean, Victorian is easy. Wow. Elizabethan is easy. Even Carolean is relatively easy. What do you get for William? I mean,
I don't know. They have Wilhelmine, which referred to William II, but that obviously was when he was Emperor of Germany, and German is Wilhelm. So I'm not sure whether we take that one or not, really, because the royal family have tried to distance themselves from German names, haven't they?
So I don't think that's good. I don't think, that one's good. What's going to be? The Willy era.
A Willy era. There you go.
The Willy era. Anyway, that we hope is many years hence. And thank you for being in touch. And if you want to communicate with us, all you need to do is write to us by email. It's purple@somethingelse.com. Susie, you always give us 3 intriguing words. What have you got to offer us this week?
Well, speaking of the royal family, I'll stick with that and offer you a word that was coined by Prince Philip, who you knew well, Gyles. And you will know this word, dontopedology.
Oh, it's a brilliant word.
Yes, dontopedology, I know as podiocide, both mean the same thing. It's putting your foot in your mouth. So dontopedology is just a slightly humorous formulation for, putting your foot in it, in other words. Now, my second one, I always think of Brian Blessed when I say this word, fulminous. Do you know what that means?
Fulminous. Well, tell me.
It means resembling thunder and lightning.
I wish I'd said it, because I thought it was going to be something like that, because he does resemble thunder and lightning, doesn't he? Go on.
He does. So fulminous, yes, of the style of thunder and lightning, or you might just say fulminous skies, if they are particularly stormy ones. And this last one I just love. It's got a slight Blackadder feel to it, if anyone recognises Blackadder or is familiar with it. John Lloyd again, actually. Bandersnatch. And a bandersnatch is an uncouth, unsavoury individual. You bandersnatch.
Is that invented by Lewis Carroll? It occurs, doesn't it, in the famous poem Jabberwocky in Alice Through the Looking Glass, a bandersnatch.
It absolutely was. It was one of his coined in the 19th century. Yeah, it's brilliant, isn't it? And I think in his works, it was slightly different. So a lot of the words that he invented have morphed slightly. So trampoose, actually, I think for him was moving fairly swiftly, whereas now I think about trampoosing to the kettle when I'm really tired. And a bandersnatch was a mythical creature who moved very fast. So not quite as we, or not at all how we use it today, but it's because of its sound, you bandersnatch, you rapscallion, etc. It sounds pretty good.
You threw in trampoose as though it's a word that we're all familiar with.
You don't know trampoos?
No.
I love trampoos. Okay, so it was I'm just going to look up where he used it, actually. And it's another...
Because I don't think it's in either of the Alice
sure.
books. I think it must be somewhere else. Tell me where it's from.
Oh, it's not, actually. I've got that completely wrong. No. Yeah, I'm thinking of Galumph, not trampoos.
Oh, there
Sorry.
you are. There
Yes.
you are. I'm dead.
Galumph was that one. You're absolutely right. And that's
so
to
glad.
gallop with triumph.
Yeah.
Whereas actually, I galumph. It's got a heavy plodding feel to it. And that's exactly what trampoos means. So you might trampoos to the office. It's trudging. You're absolutely right. I got those two mixed up.
So trampoos is a word from another source altogether.
It is. I apologise. That's from the 18th century, and it's to trudge with a heavy heart.
Well, we learned so much from you. I think you're brilliant.
Yeah, but I do get it wrong.
Well, it's nice for me to be able to catch you out for once in a million times.
They're very fallible. Put things right with a poem.
Let's stay in the 19th century. I found a poem by Charlotte Bronte that I love because it's full of optimism. And sometimes I make the mistake of looking at the newspapers or looking at the news on television. I suddenly feel low. And then I think, why am I doing this? You know, the world has always had dark sides. Let's look on the bright side. And then I came across this poem called Life by Charlotte Bronte. Life, believe, is not a dream, so dark as sages say. After a little morning rain foretells a pleasant day. Sometimes there are clouds of gloom, but these are transient all. If the shower will make the roses bloom, oh, why lament its fall? Rapidly, merrily, life's sunny hours flit by. Gratefully, cheerily, enjoy them as they fly. What though death at times steps in and calls our best away? What though sorrow seems to win o'er hope a heavy sway? Yet hope again elastic springs, unconquered though she fell. Still buoyant are her golden wings, still strong to bear us well. Manfully, fearlessly, the day of trial bear, for gloriously, victoriously, can courage quell despair.
That's beautiful.
It's a beautiful poem, and I was particularly intrigued to find the word elastic in the middle of it. Yet hope again elastic springs, because, you know, Charlotte Bronte was there writing, well, almost 200 years ago.
Yes. Exactly. No, it's absolutely beautiful. I love it. And I think elasticity plastic actually goes back a really long way to the ancient Greeks because it simply meant moldable. So it goes back to a Greek word meaning ready to mold when soft. And elastic originally was all about spontaneous expansion, I think, of air and things. So not the elastic that holds up our trousers.
Look, if you are struggling with any of the spelling, because Susie's words sometimes can be quite challenging, her trio can be found on the programme description blurb of each episode, along with the title and the author of whatever poem I happen to have chosen for this particular week.
Yes, and if you did love the show, as we hope you do and did, please follow us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Amazon Music, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts. And please do spread the word if you did enjoy us today. And for the real Purple diehards, there is also the Purple Plus Club where you can listen ad-free. And as some of you will know already, you will get exclusive bonus episodes on word and language.
Something Rhymes with Purple is a Something Else and Sony Music Entertainment production produced by Harriet Wells and Naya Deo, with additional production from Chris Skinner, Ollie Wilson, Jen Mystery, Jay Beale, and...
He's back! He's not so much of a bandersnatch as I thought, actually. He's done quite well today.
Yeah, he got lumped into the studio. It's Gully.